catastrophic, but we tell you there is going to be a team effort to bring our state back. What we saw was the utter devastation of Lahaina. We walked from end to end today as a team, Mayor Bisson for the county, Senator Schatz at the federal level, and myself, plus all of our teams. And what we saw was likely the largest natural disaster in Hawaii state history. You'll recall in 1960, we had 1 year into statehood, a tsunami that hit and took 61 lives on the Big Island. We are seeing loss of life here. As you know, the number has been rising, and we will continue to see loss of life. But we have extraordinary professionals working on this job. We also have seen many hundreds of homes destroyed, and that's going to take a great deal of time to recover from. But that's why we come together. We come together to give comfort to people, and like I said, we will prevail. But we come together now to talk about the specifics of resources. This morning at 12:10 a.m., my team and I submitted the proposal to the federal government for presidential disaster declaration. And exactly 6 hours later, we were honored to receive in the affirmative that the federal government will be supporting our full recovery, which means that there will be grants for individuals from FEMA, there will be support for rental aid, there will be support for small businesses, and this is just a small piece of what's going to be necessary. But the financial aspects of the recovery will help blunt the loss of life, because all of us will have a loved one here on Maui that we know of, that lost a house, that lost a friend. We talked to many people today, not just at the shelter, which was something to behold, and we appreciate all the volunteers, like we appreciate the incredible work of the firefighters and police. But we talked to an old gentleman who hadn't seen anything like this ever in his life, a wildfire that took a whole city. His neighbors have all lost their homes. His home was intact, but he was in tears. This is a gentleman that doesn't cry easily. We saw young men on bicycles riding through Lahaina. They also had much loss to share. They lost their houses, and they don't know where to turn. So what we're telling you is we will rebuild. Today you're going to hear from not just me as governor, but you're going to see what Senator Schatz will be able to begin working on and proposing for our aid. Also, we have experts from FEMA, of course our local leadership, our state senator, and mayor. But let me say this, a couple things. We are going to need to house thousands of people. It's our intent to initially seek 2,000 rooms so that we can get housing for people. That will mean reaching out to all of our hotels and those in the community. We'll ask people to rent those extra rooms or their ADUs or the ohana that they have in their property. We will create a program so that that's available. It will be deeply subsidized, in my opinion, to make sure that for the many months that people need to find a home, they can have a home here. We will have to make the hotels whole as we do this. They're part of our economy and our community. We're also going to call to action for people across the state. If you have additional space in your home, if you have the capacity to take someone in from West Maui, please do. We'll find a way to connect you. Please consider bringing those people into your lives, especially if you have a space that you can otherwise rent. The state will find resources because the federal government will be in full support. President Biden spoke to me directly and said that they will be here with us all the way. We'll take questions at the end, but I know there are several experts here that are going to address you, and we understand you're hungry for information. Let me just say this up front. We respect that. We know how important it is that you do your jobs, but we're just about 48 hours in, and there's tragedy on the roadside. There's tragedy in the homes in Lahaina, and we're trying to be very careful to respect the dignity of people who have had such loss. So if we've been at any time more difficult to communicate, it's because we're trying to also respect what they've gone through. We'll get you a lot of information as we go forward. So I'll pause there and give it back to Makana.
Mahalo, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to welcome up Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson.
Aloha mai kākou. In an event like this, I think we all understand, goes through several phases. We have been in the phase now of fighting fires and saving lives. I appreciate the patience the media has had with us, allowing us to go through that phase. Soon we'll be in the recovery, rebuilding phase, as the governor has spoken to. We know that's going to be a long process. I really want to speak to our citizens, our residents, our visitors, our businesses who have suffered tremendous loss and probably inconsolable grief. I think for us, the message is we're going to try our very best to identify those that have perished so that the families can have that closure and can have that understanding. We're also going to try and connect our families with those who are in our shelters. As you understand, this was an emergency. People left without taking anything with them. In most cases, they have no choice. So now we're at that phase where we want to make sure those that are in our community, whether they're at a hotel or at a shelter or staying with a family or friend, that we can try and match them back with their families. A lot of work being done by all the good people here to make that happen. And again, as the governor spoke to it, we will rebuild, and that's really what we have no choice but to do. Until you see the devastation that we all witnessed, maybe through photographs before this morning, but in person today, it's difficult to describe. But there are lots of people that will need a lot of help, and our goal as government is to provide that help to people. I did want to also speak to the folks whose homes were not damaged. And I know the question on your mind is, when can I get back to my home? Just as soon as we can try to provide the certainty that we have recovered those that have perished. And that's really our goal right now. We're hoping to find people that might just be injured. A lot of time has passed since the incident, so we're still in that phase. But please allow us to complete this process before we allow people back into the homes. There's no power, there's no water back on the west side either. So those are both things we're trying to restore as well. We also want to make sure we can provide enough shelter space at our shelters for folks. We're kind of at the limits in some of the central Maui ones, and we'll have to be creative with our team after this to try to get more for folks out on the west side. So we're very cognizant of the main things that people want to know. Where's my family member? When can I move back to my home? And what's the long-term plan? I mostly, however, want to thank all the partners, the allies that we have in our federal government, our state government, our fellow county government support, and of course our public. Your patience, your vigilance, we continue to ask for. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor. I'd now like to bring up U.S. Representative Brian Schatz.
The magnitude of the crisis on Maui can be summed up in a few phrases: no power, no water. Thousands of people need to be housed for many months. There are questions about IDing victims still on the island. Jonathan Vigliotti is in Maui, and he has seen this devastation up close. Jonathan, what did you see? What can you tell us about what is happening now and what they're trying to accomplish in the next precious hours ahead?
Yeah, good evening to you, Major. Lahaina was the hardest hit community during this wildfire disaster that swept through on Tuesday night. We toured it both on foot and also in the sky in a chopper. When we were there on the ground, I was struck by the sheer level of destruction. Home after home, entire neighborhoods destroyed. We're also talking about businesses and hotels. And then up in the sky this afternoon, we had this incredible perspective seeing how the wind, we're talking wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour, pushed this firestorm rapidly through the downtown area all the way up to the Pacific Ocean. And not even stopping there, it destroyed an entire harbor, including boats. So when the governor says he expects the death toll to rise, that is what we're hearing from many people in the community. A question that I have that maybe will be addressed later on during this press conference is what emergency protocols were in place before this crisis hit. We spoke with a number of survivors in town and that had evacuated that said at no point before this crisis struck did they have evacuation orders or receive a single text message. In fact, they said by the time firefighters firefighters did arrive on scene, the fire had done most of its damage. This is eerily reminiscent to the Paradise Fire, the campfire that tore through Paradise in California in 2018, killing more than 80 people. At that situation, the evacuation system failed, and it appears that may have happened here. So I'm curious to hear, as the days continue, what exactly went wrong there. Meanwhile, I can only describe the very active search and recovery effort underway. There are a number of firefighters here, but also the military and even civilians are now joining in this effort, Major.
Jonathan Vigliotti, thank you so much. According to and that total is expected to rise. Why Governor Josh Green called it utter devastation of Lahaina and likely the largest natural disaster in state history. Hundreds of homes are destroyed. Thousands will need temporary housing. Our coverage on this story will continue on our CBS News streaming and your local news. For some of you, the CBS Evening News will resume after this. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good evening.